Hi, 5th grade. It's Mrs. Gyoko with your flipped math lesson for today, 7-5. So for today's objective, I can divide a whole number by a decimal. So last time we divided a decimal by a whole number, like when we had a problem, say 39.3 divided by 3. That's what we did last time. Today, our problems are going to be whole numbers that are like 393 divided by a decimal, like 0.3. Okay, so our decimal is going to be here in the divisor today. Here's our example problem. Mrs. T was making mixed CDs for friends. Each CD can hold 80 minutes of music. If the average song is 3.2 minutes long, how many songs can fit on a CD? Okay, so it's asking us, our question that's asking us is how many songs could fit on a CD. Our important information is that each CD can hold 80 minutes of music, and the average song is 3.2 minutes. So we're trying to figure out, using that information, how many songs will fit on just one CD. So here is my equation. I have 80, because there's 80 minutes total, divided by 3.2 is how long the average length for a song is. And I'm going to do my first step, which is estimate. Okay, so I've got 80 divided by 3.2. I'm going to find some compatible numbers by estimating. I'm going to start with my divisor. I like to start with it because then I can find a multiple of that divisor. So I'm going to start with 3.2, and I'm going to round that down to 3. And then I'm going to find a multiple of 3 that is a compatible number, that's compatible or close to 80. Okay, so 90 would be a good compatible number. 90 divided by 3, and I'm going to find out what that equals. Well, I know 9 divided by 3 is 3, and then I annex the 0. So my answer is going to be close to 30 probably. Okay, so that's the first step, is to estimate. After I've estimated, now I'm going to multiply each number by a power of 10. So here's my problem written in a division box. I've got 80 divided by 3.2. The next step, when I have a decimal here in the divisor, it's difficult to divide like that. So I'm going to change these numbers. I have to remember that if I change one number, then I have to change the other number as well. Okay? You can't just change one, you have to change both. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply both of those numbers by the same power of 10. Remember, the powers of 10 are 10 to the first power, which is 10, 10 to the second power, which is 10 times 10, or 100, and then 10 to the third power, which is 10 times 10 times 10, which is 1,000. Okay, so I'm going to multiply both of these numbers by one of these, either 10 to the first power, 10 to the second power, or 10 to the third power. I'm going to decide based on where the decimal point is in the divisor and how many places over I want it to move. Okay? Each time I move it over to the right, that's like multiplying it times 10. If I move it over one time, it's multiplying it by 10. Remember, 10 has 1 0. Moving over one time is the same as multiplying it by 10. If I move that decimal point over 2 spaces, if I moved it over 2, that would be multiplying it times 100. Okay? So, in this problem, let me get rid of all this extra stuff. I only need to move it over one space. Okay? If I move it over one space, if I take 3.2 and I multiply it times 10, I'm going to move it over one space, and that number 3.2 is going to become 32. And then I have to do that with 80 as well. I have to multiply it by that power of 10. So I'm going to multiply it by 10, or 10 to the first power, which is the same thing, and that's going to change 80 to 800. Okay? So now my problem is no longer going to be 80 divided by 3.2. It's going to be 800 divided by 32. Okay, so I've written that here. I've got 800 divided by 32. Remember, when I had just 80, okay, 80 still had a decimal point, okay, and I move it over one spot because I'm multiplying it by 10, that becomes 800. So now my 800, I just left that decimal point there. It's the same thing as if I didn't have the decimal point. If I took it away, 800 with a decimal point is the same as 800 with a decimal point. It's just 800. Okay, now going back to my estimate, I estimate to be about 30 times. So let's see if that is correct. Okay, so I'm going to divide 800 divided by 32. I look at the first digit. 8 divided by 32 is too small. So I'll have to do 80 divided by 32. So if I did 3 times 32, well, I know 3 times 30 is 90. So already that number is going to be too big. So it's probably going to be 2, okay? So now I'm going to do 32 times 2, and I can do my multiplication over on the side if I need to. 2 times 2 is 4, and 2 times 3 is 6, so 64. And subtract. And 80 minus 64. So I'm going to borrow a 10. And now I have 10 minus 4 is 6. 7 minus 6 is 1. Okay? I'm going to pull down a 0. Now, my original estimate was 30, and I can tell I'm already at 20 something. So I'm going to guess that maybe it's close to 29. Let's see if that works. 9 times 32. So I'm going to do 32 times 9 over here. 9 times 2 is 18. Carry the 1. 1 times 9 is 27, plus 1 is 28, which gives me 288. Whoa, that is way too big. Okay, so I know it can't be 9, so I'm going to do a little bit more of investigating. Let's try 5. Let's go down a little bit lower. Now I'll try 5 times 32. 5 times 2 is 10. Carry the 1. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 1 is 16. Okay, and I get 160, and that works. So I put the 5 up there. 5 times 32 is 160. Subtract. I get 0. There's nothing else to bring down, right? I'm completely done. Nothing else but 0. So I don't need to do that. So I'm done. My answer is 25. Okay. So the first step is to estimate. The second step is to multiply times power of 10 so that your divisor over here has no decimal point in it anymore, and then you divide. Okay, we're going to try some more. We're going to find a power of 10 that will make the divisor a whole number. We're just going to practice changing the numbers a little bit, okay, with powers of 10. And I just want to review, remember, when you have a decimal point, when you move it over one spot, that's like multiplying it times 10. If you move it over, let's say the decimal point was right here for some reason. If you move it over 2 spots, that's like multiplying it times 100. Move it over 3 spots, and then you're multiplying it times 1,000. Okay? And remember, you have to do it with both numbers, the divisor and the dividend. You can't just do it for one. You have to do it for both. Otherwise, it won't work. You'll get the wrong answer. So, if we have 426 divided by 0.6, what would you multiply the divisor by and the dividend by so that you get no decimal point in the divisor anymore? Well, I see that I have my decimal point here is 0.6. I'm going to move over one spot. So that means I'm multiplying it times 10. I'm going to multiply this other number times 10 as well. Okay, I do have a decimal point there. Even though you didn't see it, it's still there. It's just at the end, next to the 1 spot. Decimal point's always by the 1 spot, between the ones and the tenths. And then I move it over one place. That means I'm multiplying it times 10, and I put a 0 right there. So now I've got 4,260 divided by 6. And there are no more decimal points. Okay? And my power of 10 was just 10 to the first power. Okay? That's what I multiplied both of those numbers before to get. Okay? Number 2, I have 216 divided by 0.03. What multiple of 10, or what power of 10 am I going to multiply these numbers by so that this decimal point is at the end or is no longer in the problem anymore? I'm going to move it over 2 spaces. 2 spaces is the same as 2 zeros, which is in the number 100. 100 is the same as 10 to the second power. Okay, so I multiplied 0.03 times the power of 2, or 100, which means I have to do it over here as well. At 216, I have to do that as well. So it already has a decimal point, even though you don't see it. I'm going to rewrite it over here, 216.0, right? We move over 2 spots, 1, 2. So there was a missing 0 there. So now my new number is 21,600 times 3. Or I'm sorry, not times, divided by 3. We're doing division. Divide by 3, okay? And I multiplied it times 10 to the second power in order to get those numbers, okay? Let's try number 3. 2,800 divided by 0.07. You try it this time. What are your new numbers going to be, and what power of 10 are you going to multiply it times? Okay, now you should have taken that decimal point and moved over 2 spots, which is the same as multiplying it times 100 or 10 to the second power. When you do that, then you get the number 7. Okay, the divisor is now 7. If you take 2,800 and you multiply it times 100, you have to add on 2 zeros and move that decimal point to the end. You get 2,800,000, 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros, so which is 280,000. Okay, try number 4. 720 divided by 0.1 or 1.2. Okay, you should have moved that decimal point over 1 spot, which is the same as multiplying it times 10 or 10 to the first power. You're going to multiply 720 times 10 or 10 to the first power, which means you're just going to add on 1 0 when that happens. And you move that decimal point over 1 place, and you get 7,200 divided by 12. Okay? Now, your turn. You're going to find the power of 10, rewrite the equation completely. Okay? Here's your first one. 2,466 divided by 0.9. Okay, you should have moved that decimal point over 1 place, which means you're multiplying it times 10 or 10 to the first power. You need to multiply the other number by 10 to the first power, or 10, and so you would get 24,660 divided by 9. Okay? You can put an equal sign there too. Number 6, 65 divided by 0.05. Okay, should have moved that decimal point over 2 places, which means you're multiplying times 100, or you're multiplying that number times 10 to the second power. You gotta do the same thing with 65. You have to multiply it times 100, or multiply it times 10 to the second power. Remember, that's the same thing. And if you do that, then you're going to get 6,500, because that decimal point that's there, the hidden decimal point, moves over 2 spaces. You have to add on those 2 zeros. So you have 6,500 divided by 5. Okay, number 7, 164 divided by 2.05. Okay, so I need to move that decimal point over 2 places, which is the same as multiplying it times 100 or times 10 to the second power. I have to do that to the other number, multiply it times 100 or multiply it to times 10 to the second power. So move that decimal point over 2 places, rewrite the number let's see, is that 16,400 divided by 205. Okay? Now, you're going to solve the problem. So first you're going to estimate, then you're going to multiply the digits, or multiply both numbers by powers of 10, and then solve the problem. Okay? So here's your first one. You have 24 divided by 0.03. Okay, so if I see that I've got 0.03, I know that that is less than 1, and then I have 24. So I have 24 divided by a number that's less than 1. 24 divided by 1 would be 24, so I know my answer is going to be smaller than 24. Now I'm going to multiply times the power of 10, and I'm going to take that decimal point, I'm going to move over 2 spots. So now my number is 3. I have to move the decimal point in 24 over 2 spots as well. So I change that number to 2,400. Now remember, there's a decimal point there. Even if I don't see it, even if I don't need it, there's still a decimal point there. It just moved over. So then I start dividing. So I have 2 can't be divided by 3, so I've got 24 divided by 3 is 8. 8 times 3 is 24. Subtract. Bring down the 0. Okay, 0 can't be divided by 3. 0 times 0 is 0. Bring down the next 0. And 0 can't be divided. So I go through that process again. Okay, so my answer is 800. All right, let's try another one. 18 divided by 0.06. Okay, again, I have an answer that is less than 1. I think I drew that wrong last time. Less than 1. It's about half. 0.06 is close to half. Okay, so my answer is probably going to be half of 18. 18 divided by 0.5 or by a half would be 9. So now I'm going to multiply both of those numbers times a power of 10. So I have to move that decimal point 2 places, which means I'm multiplying it times 100. I'm going to move this decimal point over 2 places and then rewrite it. So now I've got I've got 1,800 divided by 6. And then I can start dividing. So 1 can't be divided by 6, so I have to do 18. 18 divided by 6 is 3. 3 times 6 is 18. Subtract. And then I have nothing but zeros. Now here's the trick. When I have nothing but zeros, I can just go ahead and bring them down and write 0 at the top. Okay? That's just a shortcut. So then I have 300 as my answer. Number 10, 2,550 divided by 0.25. Okay, so when I estimate here, I'm going to think of 0.25 is a half of a half, and that helps me figure out what the answer is. So I do like half of 2,550 would be like about 1,250 would be a half, and then I do half of that would be 5, 6, 7, about 700. Okay, so my answer is going to be close to 700. Okay, what I did is I took this number, I divided it in half, then I took that number and divided it in half, which is a half of a half, which is 1/4, and 0.25 is the same as 0.25 is the same as a fourth. Okay, so let me get rid of all that stuff, and now I'm going to multiply both of those numbers by powers of 10. Move that decimal point over 2 places, which means I'm multiplying it times 100. So I have to multiply that number times 100, move the decimal point over 2 places, and then I'm going to rewrite it so that I can divide. So I have 2, I don't need to put that comma there, whoops, 2,550, 0, 0, okay, added those zeros. Let me get rid of some of this stuff. And then it's being divided by 25. So I've got 255,000 divided by 25. So I'm going to find the first digits I can divide by. So I've got 25 can be divided by 25 one time. So 25 minus 25 is 0. Pull down the next digit is 5. 5 is too small to be divided by 25, so I put a 0 there. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and pull down the next digit. Now I could multiply 0 times 25 is 0 and do all that stuff, but this is just a shortcut way. Okay, now I have 50. Remember that digit doesn't really mean anything, a 0 in front of a number. 50 divided by 25 is 2. 2 times 25 is 50. Subtract, and now I have nothing but zeros to bring down. Okay, so I had 2 zeros left. So my answer is 10,200. Ooh, a little more than 750. Okay. All right. we are finished for today. Good job, guys. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.